Alright everyone, welcome back. Year 5 of The Division 2 is fast approaching, with the final season of this year starting in December. Recently, Ubisoft indicated The Division as a primary focus for future content. Couple that with an ever-increasing dev team size, and I think a Year 5 expansion or DLC might actually happen, so let's talk about this. Drop a like and subscribe to stay up to date with all my content, and let's begin. Recently, Ubisoft had their earnings report, and in this report they confirm Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six and The Division are basically their biggest IPs, which came as a bit of a surprise to me. A welcome surprise, might I add, because The Division is rarely ever mentioned in anything Ubisoft has to talk about. They go on to say how these IPs are the foundation of Ubisoft, and that this is where their focus will be. Now, up until now, it's felt like Ubisoft have pretty much forgotten about The Division, and at least from what I've seen, Year 4 of The Division only happened because Massive pushed for it. This earnings report then appears to have shown a shift in Ubisoft focus with the Division franchise, which might explain why they greenlit Heartland, The Division Mobile, The Division Film, and I'm sure there are other projects in the works. Some time ago, Yannick actually said that any Year 5 content will depend on how successful the Year 4 content has been, and after Season 9, Massive confirmed Year 5 is happening, which just shows how successful Season 9 was, that Ubisoft were willing to greenlight a Year 5 so early on into Year 4. If you'd have asked me a year ago whether I thought we'd get a Year 5, my answer would have been a swift and firm no. And now I'm sat here with the earnings report in mind thinking, might we actually get something more for Year 5 than just more seasons? I think that's becoming more and more of a possibility. This is reinforced by the fact the dev team working on The Division 2 is getting bigger and bigger. I think I saw a post from Pally a little while ago that said the dev team was almost complete. In fact, having checked the jobs board on the Massive website recently, there are currently no jobs available for The Division 2, something I've not seen for a couple of years, and I normally check the jobs board probably at least once a month. I think it's safe to assume the dev team for The Division 2 are probably now at full capacity, which is really encouraging, especially when you consider that multiple studios are working on different aspects of the game. Now, officially, we've heard nothing about any kind of expansion for Year 5, and unofficially, I've seen no inside sources or leaks to suggest this is being worked on. But I think all the latest indicators point in that direction, and it has me very excited. Warlords of New York was a great expansion in my opinion, and I know it brought back a ton of players who were perhaps waiting for a large content drop. Now, I'm confident the same would happen again with any new expansion, and I think most importantly The Division 2 needs a big expansion at this point. Seasons are great, albeit the seasons that we have, they do need work, and I've done a video on that. But I cannot foresee another 15 months of seasons being enough to sustain the community. I could be wrong on that, of course, because I don't actually know. So maybe I should say I don't think 15 months of seasons could sustain me without some significant content drops. Now, we are getting a new game mode soon, and I suspect we will get a new countdown map as well in Year 5. But another year and a half of running to the same locations for manhunt targets doesn't exactly have me excited, regardless of how good the lore entry is. So with that in mind, with a possible expansion on the horizon for Year 5, what would you like to see? Leave a list of things you want in the comments down below. For me, there are a couple of priorities, one of which I will make a separate video on, and you'll see why in a moment. Firstly, we need a new location with new missions, new control points, and new everything in between. I think this may be top of the list for many people. It's certainly top of my list, and I think it's easy to see why. This will undoubtedly make the game feel fresh, the same way the New York map did, and as someone whose favourite activity is taking down control points, this would have me the most excited if Massive were to introduce this to the game for Year 5. I also think it's paramount in the continuation of the story. Not so much the lore, but as I said before, I'm not sure I can go to Washington D.C. or New York again for manhunt targets for another, 15 months. I'm just bored of the same spaces that I've been running for the last 4 years, and I think that Year 5 needs, as I said, it needs that big expansion. It needs that big thing that's going to draw crowds back in, because I do think that if they don't introduce a new map or some kind of expansion like that with Year 5, that slowly but surely the community are going to get bored. As I've said, they're going to get bored and player base is going to keep dropping off. Secondly, I'm a huge fan of the chase, the grind, and less a fan of the reward. I will make a whole video on this, but I want the feeling of powering up that you get from starting a new game. This can only really be achieved by a level increase, and I know that is hugely controversial, but that's what I want. When a new Destiny season comes out or a new Destiny DLC comes out, I enjoy the power grind. Now, I know a lot of people don't enjoy the power grind in Destiny. They hate just getting that number, and I get it. I'm probably in the minority for this, but that for me is the part that I enjoy the most. It's the same with starting a new game where you get new guns and you kind of build up that power. I'm not so much a fan of the reward at the end. You know, you get your best, you craft the best gun that you can get. Okay, but what now? Well, there isn't anything. And so for me, I don't enjoy that part. I like the building up part. And yeah, I'm going to make a separate video on that, but I don't know. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Thirdly, we need this specialization revamp. With the limited information that we've had about this new system, it does seem like something I'm really going to enjoy. And I think it could have a huge effect on how we all play the game. That's what Massive intend for this specialization revamp to be, which is why they're taking so long to get it out. Specializations for the longest time have kind of just been there, and unless you're really trying to do the hardest content, there's really no reason to even consider their effects on the build that you have. They really don't play any part, for the most part, in people's builds. I know that when I go, of course, when I go into heroic content and stuff, then I have my character built out with my specialization tree picked, etc, etc. However, if I just picked another specialization, I'm sure I could do that heroic content. Maybe not as easily, but I could still do it. It's not a big deal. The revamp, of course, looks to change all of that and make a new specialization tree that feels impactful and feels important. And I think it's meant to be almost like an MMO light kind of tree, where you kind of get a certain amount of points, let's say 30 points, but there's 50 slots, for example. So you really have to make a decision on what you want and what you don't want, which is something we don't have in the specializations at the moment, really. And so that choice is what's going to be the difference between is how it's going to be impactful in the builds that you run, because hopefully those choices are actually strong choices. So you really have to decide what it is that you want from that. Massive have taken a very long time with the specialization revamp. I think they may have mentioned it maybe a year and a half ago. I can't exactly remember when it was. I was expecting it to come out as part of Year 4, because that's what it was. I think it was initially announced to be part of. I think it was initially announced to be part of Season 9. It may come out as part of Season 11. I don't know. But I really think at this point they're going to hold off and it will come as part of Year 5. And I really hope it has a big effect on the game. So those are kind of my, I would say, maybe top 3 priorities. In terms of a new map expansion, I'm not all that bothered about where it is. I just want somewhere new to explore. A new lick of paint is what this game really needs. And I think an expansion would certainly do that. I think that would bring back a lot of players. Of course, you have to fill that area. There needs to be, you know, the new man and targets need to go there and all that sort of stuff. But just having that new place to run, I think, is really important for me personally. I'm not sure if you guys agree with me there. Let me know again in the comments down below. But that's it, guys. That's it for today's video. Thanks very much for sticking around until the end of this one. Do I think that we are going to get a Year 5 expansion? At this stage, I don't think we're going to get one. However, I do think there are signs that we may get one. What I'm not going to do, because I've learnt my lesson with this game, what I'm not going to do is get my expectations high on this one. I'm going to keep my expectations very low. We've heard nothing about this, so at the moment, this isn't coming. And that's kind of where my expectations sit. And I'm going to keep them there for as long as I possibly can, regardless of how much information comes out, to maybe support the fact that we might get an expansion. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this one. Leave a like on the video if you did. And until the next one, Epic out.